if I were to say to you that, like, vocally, Endpoint, we start off 90s. I literally wrote this down, and then it seemed, and I'm not saying you plan this in any way, shape, or form, but I'm saying it seems like that thing that we were talking about earlier. Like, you guys started off as like you're singing, it's sounding like 90s, and then as the band goes on, you guys kind of, at least maybe your vocals kind of become a little bit sort of like that UC, like 80s sound, kind of like that new wave kind of thing that was happening. And then by the end of Endpoint, vocally and even musically to some degree, there's like a Fugazi DC thing happening. Am I wrong in thinking that? I mean, not wrong, but you know what I mean. Like what are your thoughts to how Endpoint's trajectory went throughout all those records?
Yeah, I think we were just trying new things. You know, Duncan, and really a lot, Duncan wrote the majority of the guitar riffs, right, for those bands. So he would just, as he went through musical phases, he would really, I mean, we would change. And then, like I said, it's just a natural progression. I guess we started playing in 87 and then as Death Watch, and then, you know, it was 94 when we broke up. So we just got, you know, we were just exposed to different things and kind of wanted to go different directions. I mean, on the last record, that kind of weird country song, like, I still like that. It's awesome. It's like, but it was strange. Like, but we were all listening to, like, you know, alt country was kind of coming in a little bit, and some of those early things were like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Well, that was another thing that I also thought about your guys' career, is a lot of what you did kind of foreshadowed a lot of what came later, especially the last record, especially doing that. Because I remember listening to the last record and then listening to it again now and being like, holy crap, what year was this? Because it's like, it happened, like what you guys were doing seemed to kind of happen later for a lot of the bands. Like it kind of reminds me of what Jeff from Gameface did with that band March. Like, he recorded a record that, like, many years later other bands and other musicians seem to also kind of be doing.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I'm gonna say this about, I can say this because I'm not talking about me, but I think Duncan, like, was kind of ahead in many ways. Like, you think about Guilt.
Oh,
like,
my God.
Guilt, if Guilt would have happened a little bit later, it would have been the hugest band ever. Like, they just remixed that record, Barstown Road Ugly Box, and it's awesome. They're going to be releasing it coming up. And it's just like, it got the right mix that it probably should have always had. But it's like, man, this is so good. It's just, you know, it's just about timing. But I do think that Duncan was really innovative and kind of exploring new things. And I think that we kind of followed along, like, just musically. And again, I think that, and he was always really supportive of the kind of me and my process in terms of, you know, freaking out all half the time on stage and, you know, writing all these sad lyrics or whatever. Actually, not sad. I think there's a lot of, like, positive, real uplifting stuff in there as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that was the process. I think we were just going through changes in what we're listening to, and we wanted to do something a little bit different that accommodated the interests of the people in the band.
And that's, I think, what also speaks to the uniqueness and the beauty of hardcore, because you guys could do that, and it's not like chances are you're not going to have a record label telling you, no, come on, guys, give us Catharsis, give us that record again. Like, you were able to, like Endpoint, you know, even though it started off as Death Watch, like, that's 7 years of doing something like that. It's that most hardcore bands don't go for 7 years, at least, you know, as I saw it, you know, in the I mean, I would say 80s and 90s, you didn't see that happening.
It was hard, you know. It's hard being in a relationship with 4 or 5 other people, you know.
Well, and think about this also, like, how young were we all back then? And I mean, you guys are touring the country, doing all this stuff, like taking care of your like it's amazing. And I mean, like you're saying, you're turning 50. I'm going to be 50 soon too. Like like if I like when I see younger people doing it now, no matter what I think of the music, I'm just like, that's amazing. Like it's just it's a
I mean, and it really is, and things are changing. Yeah, there's the internet and all that. That's way different, but I think that music will be another way for people to have opportunities, especially as economics are changing in this country. And I just think that, um, even yes, I haven't really thought about this a whole lot, but there's a certain level of people of old guy bitching about like, hey, everybody's got a recording studio now and everybody can do but the fact is that it's still a great privilege to play music, and I think that it will still serve a purpose. I think we all predict that times will get harder, especially in this country, and so I think that it still has this really powerful function for young people, and I'm so glad when they're in it. I have a friend that was just talking to me the other day about some some pretty difficult challenges their child is going through, and I didn't say it, but I was like, you ever thought about getting them in the punk scene? Like in there, maybe that'll help. But yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of it's just awesome when they're doing that.
where did with Endpoint, and obviously now it continues, but where for you does the the being of service and the whole social justice and the whole and like being pro social programs, where did all that come from, do you think?
I mean, obviously, there's all sorts of life influences and people influences, but for the music, I think I was really turned on by. Um, I know this isn't it, but I always attribute this to it. So I remember, so Fugazi played their first out of town show in Louisville. And so, I mean, everybody's excited, like, oh my God, Ian Mackay, people are screaming, filler. And Ian kept going, you're living in the past, you're living in the past. Uh, but they played Suggestion, and they said the song's about rape and da da da, and like, I remember listening to the lyrics, listening to the record, and it was just so broke me down as a person. Like, have objectified women this way, because you're a teenage boy. You're and I think I just wanted to do better, right? And it touched me in such a way that and still to this day, there's a lot of personalness in a lot of our songs, but I really wanted to help people, or I wanted my songs to connect to people. I wanted to tell a story. And, ultimately I was reinforced for it, like people after shows, there'd be this long, like hug lines, and like, people writing me letters all the time. And sometimes they're really intense. Um, and so it shaped me into, that's a part of my role. Um, and so, yeah, I think it was around that time. So, you hear in Time of Hate was, pretty generic. Not generic, but it's what a 17, 18-year-old, probably not now because you're so much more sophisticated, but back then it was just like, yes, mother beaten down in, we're singing about the environment. And we had a friend that died Duncan had a friend that died in a drunk driving accident. So it's about that. And the rest of the stuff were just kind of copies of other types of songs that we had heard. There's a cheesy fair weather friend kind of thing, and then it was around that time we did listen to a lot of hardcore. We listened to a lot of DC stuff, a lot of different things, and so I think we took a really big turn at catharsis, and then just kind of moved on from there. And then I've definitely become more targeted in the things I talk about, in the later years, just because I've probably had more education.